So when it comes to Alan, he is one of the strongest beings in the Invincible universe, and like many other characters, his story is very unique. In the past, his species, the Unipans, were almost completely wiped out after the Viltrumites destroyed their home planet Unipa during their campaign to conquer planets and add them to their empire. So the Viltrumites destroyed Unipa because the Unipans rebelled against them. After the destruction of their home planet, the Unipans were forced to create breeding camps for themselves to prevent their species' extinction. Only known as Alan, he was born at one of these breeding camps, and as a result, he never knew who his father was. He was also the only successful result of the Unipan breeding program, because all the other results had multiple genetic defects, making him the only super Unipan. One of Alan's earliest missions involved him fighting Viltrumites on another planet, which resulted in not only his near-death defeat, but also the breeding camp project being shut down. Alan eventually found work as an evaluation officer for the Coalition of Planets, a secret anti-Viltrumite alliance dedicated to stopping the Empire's conquest of the galaxy. He traveled between planets, challenging their mightiest inhabitants to ensure they had warriors strong enough to defend them against Viltrumite threats. Whilst working for the Coalition of Planets, Alan visited Earth several times incorrectly, believing he was visiting a similarly named planet called Urath. Most of these visits involved him clashing with Omni-Man as the representative of Earth in his attempts to evaluate the planet's strength to defend itself. Due to his faulty belief that he was evaluating Urath instead and thus never closely checking his records, Alan never realized that Nolan was a Viltrumite until much later. During one of his recent visits to Earth, he was noticed, and Invincible was told to fight him off. So Invincible went to space and was attacked from behind. Alan communicated via telepathy and, believing that he was Omni-Man, exclaimed to him that he had shaved the mustache. Invincible fought with Alan, sending him towards a satellite which was thrown back at him. Mark was punched and teased. Alan says that if he was protecting the planet, then he was sorry for their people. Invincible took a moment to breathe and made Alan realize that he was not the same person who had fought him years ago. Invincible sent him crashing into the moon, which only made him laugh. When Invincible tells him he only wants to talk, Alan asks him if he is using his time out, which confuses Invincible. However, Alan mentions that he does not make the rules and grabs a rock for both of them to sit on. He tells Invincible that he is an evaluation officer for the Coalition of Planets and is making sure that there is somebody capable of defending them. Invincible told him he did not know what he meant, but Alan told him that the planet Urath was on his list, which made Invincible tell him that he had gotten the planet wrong since they were on Earth. Alan, embarrassed by his mistake, commented that he was in trouble and introduced himself. Invincible presented himself, which makes Alan tell him that the name was optimistic since he believed he was pretty vincible, after which he flew off, presumably returning to the Coalition. Invincible is left confused and goes to outer space. Months later, Mark is in space, ready to punch his father, but is met by Alan the alien. He tells him that when he told the Coalition of Planets he had been going to Earth instead of Urath, they had lost their minds and let him know there was a Viltrumite on his planet, which was marked for Viltrumite takeover. Mark lands on the moon and tells him to sit down while he explains. Alan is confused that Mark is a Viltrumite, but does not work for them, and cannot believe Omni-Man had just left, since Viltrumites did not give up that easily and were relentless, having destroyed his world when they fought back. Alan literally cannot picture what Mark was going through since his people had to create breeding camps just to stop them from going extinct. He tells Mark that the Coalition of Planets would want to hear about him since the Coalition was trying to unite enough worlds to stop the Viltrumite Empire, and mentions Mark could be the advantage they were looking for. He tells him that the Viltrumites would come back for him and asks him his plans, to which Mark responds that he'll finish high school, an idea which Alan approves of. However, he asks with confusion what high school is. After Alan's conversation with Invincible, he returns to Thalaskira to brief the Coalition of Planets on Invincible. When he arrives, he is chewed out by members of the Coalition for his previous mistake with Urath. He is then greeted by General Telia, who takes him to the Council of the Coalition, which includes its leader Theidus. During his meeting with them, he briefs them on Invincible and his fight with Omni-Man and the possible advantage it could hold for them. The council, however, disagreed with Alan, stating that they shouldn't trust another Viltrumite, no matter what, and even though Thetis did agree with Alan's point, the other council members were still wary of the idea. While heading his way out, Thetis briefs Alan on a potential mole within the coalition, and is given the task of finding who it is. Alan then makes his way back to his home, where he is again greeted by Talia, who states that she missed him. They then proceed to make flirtatious remarks between each other before making love in his house. Alan and Talia later go on a dinner date where Alan talks about the beauty of his planet, as well as trying to land a flirtatious remark on Talia. When Alan is about to inform Talia about the mole in the coalition, he is suddenly attacked by Fula, Lucan and Vidor, who send him out into deep space to interrogate him. When Alan is asked about the whereabouts of Nolan Grayson, he responds by insulting them while not giving away any information. After another punch from Vidor, he realizes his chances against them are slim to none, so after Fula asks him about Nolan, he once again responds with a joke. The Viltrumites then proceed to beat him up for his refusal to give away information. They violently mutilate him, leaving one of his arms amputated, his eye socket ripped out, and guts spilled open in the vast cosmos of space. The Viltrumites leave Alan's body in space, as Talia watches in horror as to what they have just done to her partner. The coalition of planets were thankfully able to retrieve Alan's body from space and get him into a stable living condition while he was still unconscious. Talia watches over Alan's body while being deeply worried about his condition before being interrupted by Thetis, who states that the Viltrumites have underestimated the Unipan will to survive. He then gives Talia some more words of motivation before seeing her out. However, when Talia left, Thetis strangely lowered the power on Alan's life support before apologizing to Alan. It looks like that Thetis is trying to kill Alan, but that was not the case. After months of healing, Alan awoke and accidentally ripped apart the machine with his newfound strength. Shortly after, Thaddeus, head of the council, entered and revealed that Alan's body had changed and adapted to his recent beatdown, making him near or at Viltrumite power levels. Alan questions this because no clear-cut power level has ever been found for a Viltrumite. Thaddeus asks for the nurse bot to leave and reveals he is in fact a Viltrumite rebel. He goes on to say that Invincible may be the key to ending the reign of their empire. However, he explains that Alan must only report to him now because he believes there may be a mole in the council. During his talk with Thetis, Alan is given the task of returning to Earth and asking Invincible to speak with Thetis about joining their cause. While heading towards Earth, not knowing who it is, Alan is attacked by the Immortal. Invincible catches word of Alan and Immortal fighting and flies into space to stop it. After the fight is broken up, Alan and Immortal reconcile, and Alan tells Invincible that he needs to speak to him. During the chat, Alan told Invincible about him being attacked, his power boost, and his working with Thetis. Alan asked Invincible if he'd come with him to Taliscria, and Invincible told him that he doesn't want to, and that he's got too much he has to deal with. But Invincible informs Alan of his little brother, his father being taken for execution by the Viltrumites, and his discovery that his dad's sci-fi novels hold the key to defeating the Viltrumites. With his new information, Alan says goodbye and heads back to Taliscria. While flying back, Alan notices a Viltrumite ship, and they noticed him. Anissa was dispatched out from the Viltrumite ship, ready to fight. While fighting, she and Alan are exchanging remarks, and Alan discovers that the ship he came into contact with was none other than a Viltrumite prison ship. During the battle, Alan remembered his talk with Invincible about how his dad was taken in for execution. So, Alan formed a plan to throw the fight and free Omni-Man while on the inside. In prison, Alan crosses paths with Omni-Man and sends him a telepathic message telling him that they will talk later. Later, Alan discovered that his telepathic abilities would allow him to speak with Omni-Man while they were inside their cells. Alan tells Nolan of his orders from Thetis. He speaks of the importance of Invincible in the coming war between the coalition of planets and the Viltrum Empire. Alan informs him of his newfound strength and his plan to free Nolan from prison. At first, Nolan is reluctant to betray his people, but Alan continues to tell Nolan all he knows about the sci-fi novels, Invincible's new younger half-brother, and eventually he begins to tell him of other things. Eventually, this led to Nolan talking about other things as well. Many things were discussed while Nolan awaited execution. Eventually, they even talked about their many encounters in Earth's orbit years ago when they knew nothing about each other. Through their talking, a bond started to form and they became friends. Alan was no longer there to rescue an ally, he needed to rescue his friend. So they discussed plans of escape and were interrupted many times by failed execution attempts on Alan. Eventually, Alan found the right time to escape when the Viltrumites attempted to execute Nolan. Alan followed his 3-step plan. Step 1. Cause damage and trip alarms to create a distraction. Step 2. Free the prisoners so they can cause even more of a distraction. And Step 3. Scan the prisoners as they escape to see if any of them are formidable enough to aid him and Nolan in their escape efforts. While looking among prisoners, he soon notices Battle Beast, and after allying himself with the prisoner Battle Beast, Alan heads to the execution room to save his friend. Alan saves him just in time, but they get overrun by prison guards. With quick thinking, Alan punches a hole in the side of the ship, thus suffocating all of the guards. The only people to survive were Alan, Nolan, Battle Beast, and 2 Viltrumites. Battle Beast handled one of them fairly quickly, and Alan and Nolan used teamwork to finish off the last one. Nolan tells Alan that they have plenty of time to gather their supplies because he informs Alan that there aren't many Viltrumites left. He tells Alan that there are less than 50 pure-blooded Viltrumites left in the whole universe. Nolan told Alan that the enemies of the Viltrumite Empire created a virus unique to their genetic code that wiped out 99.9% of the Viltrumite population. Nolan told Alan that the only reason they wanted Earth was to use it as a breeding camp because a human's DNA is almost 100% compatible with a Viltrumite. With this news, they head back to Taliskria. While on Taliskria, Alan lets Nolan stay at his apartment. Alan and Nolan meet with Thetis and are given their first mission of finding the Space Racer's gun, which is a gun that can shoot through anything, but it can only be fired by the Space Racer. Upon finding the gun in an asteroid belt where Nolan left it, they discovered that the Space Racer was still alive, even after Nolan buried him alive almost 100 years ago. With a little explaining of Nolan's reformation by Alan and some apologizing on Nolan's behalf, the Space Racer agreed to come with them to Taliskria and join their side. Once back on Taliskria, they were given a series of missions that include gathering vicious Ragnar creatures, collecting Klaxus plant poison, finding space sharks, and finding Battle Beast. Soon, the time for war arrived, and Alan and Nolan returned to Earth. When Alan and Nolan arrive on Earth, they try to find Tech Jacket. They go to his house and find that he isn't home. His neighbor tells him that he is up in the space station, and Alan is surprised that his Unipan physiology doesn't scare him. They fly into space and greet him, getting him to join in the fight. They fly back to Mark's house, where Nolan asks to speak with his estranged wife. After Nolan decides Oliver should accompany them, they head on a Taliskrian spaceship. Their journey is interrupted by Conquest, Lucan, and an unnamed Viltrumite destroying their ship. Alan wakes up and attacks a Viltrumite while Tech Jacket is fixing his armor. After the battle is over, Tech Jacket and Alan hide inside the Tech Jacket armor on the Viltrumite warship. For the next few days, Alan would hide out and bond with Tech Jacket until Space Racer discovers their location and comes to rescue them. After getting rescued, they report to Taliskria, and Zack tells the duo he's growing a beard, much to Thetis and Alan's annoyance. Thetis would send Tech Jacket and Alan on a series of planets over a few months, with some missions being successful and others failing. About to officially start the war, Thetis gives a speech to the coalition of planets, but mid-speech the Viltrumites come crashing through structures all over Taliskria. Alan finds Tech Jacket sleeping with an alien, commenting that he has a girlfriend. Tech Jacket says he does, but their parts aren't compatible. Alan asks him to head to Taliskria because the planet is under attack. As soon as they arrive on the planet, Alan tackles Craig while Tech Jacket rescues Thetis. Soon Mark, Oliver and Nolan arrive at Taliskria to assist the coalition. After Mark and Oliver destroy the Viltrumite warship, Alan is attacked by Anissa before the Viltrumites retreat, after the traitor of the coalition reveals that the Viltrumites are on their home planet. They ready themselves for Viltrum. Soon, Thetis prepares the group of most skilled fighters from Coalition of Planets and decides to attack the Viltrumites on their home world. As they head for Viltrum, Thetis gets ambushed by a Viltrumite woman. Battlebeast smacks her with his mace, and soon the Viltrumites arrive with Frag leading their charge. Alan saves Tech Jacket by decapitating his Viltrumite captor. Another Viltrumite charges at him, and he easily kills him by impaling his arm through his stomach and out of the Viltrumite's mouth. Alan pulls his hand out and continues fighting. While he is fighting, Nolan, Mark and Thetis crash into Viltrum, causing the planet to explode. He is knocked unconscious by the impact, but he recovers to fight Frag. But Frag decapitates Thetis while hitting Alan and Nolan too. Alan looks in horror as Frag shows Thetis' head as a trophy. Soon, Anissa, Craig and two other Viltrumite overwhelm Alan until Battlebeast disperses them after being thrown by Frag. Anissa continues to attack him with some other Viltrumites, but Space Racer kills another Viltrumite and rescues Alan. Alan suggests they continue helping Nolan and Invincible, but Space Racer says that the plan was to wait until he arrived with the Ragnars, and now they are greatly outnumbered and their only choice is to wait for reinforcements. So Alan reluctantly goes and heads to Taliskria, leaving Mark and Nolan to fend for themselves. After Thetis' death, Alan is named the new coalition leader, and now everyone is supposed to call him Grey Alan, but he just jokes about it and remains the same. He sends Tech Jacket to inspect previously occupied Viltrumite planets. 2 weeks after the battle, Alan goes to see Mark, who has made a recovery. Tech Jacket arrives and reports that the Viltrumites have disappeared. Mark begins to panic as he realizes that the Viltrumites can't be found because they are on Earth and not in Coalition territory. Alan lets him go to check it out, but informs him that he's doubtful and the Viltrumites don't pose much of a threat. He also tells him that he's gone through many precautionary measures to protect the Coalition of Planets and other planets that were formerly owned by Viltrumites. While Mark, Nolan and Tech Jacket are heading to Earth, Alan is trying to cope with commanding the entire coalition and him missing Tech Jacket. While hanging out, Alan was given an info tablet that contained Thetis' final words for him. The tablet revealed the hidden location of a perfected Scourge virus, and Thetis stated that unleashing it this time will kill every single Viltrumite. He is told to ignore his attachment to his Viltrumite allies and unleash it for the good of the universe. Thetis' last words on the tablet read, "Whatever you do, make certain that I did not die in vain." So now, Alan must face a tough decision: let the Viltrumites live, thus keeping his friends alive, or unleash the Scourge virus, killing his friends and all Viltrumites for the good of the universe. With Nolan still on Earth, Alan and Telia watch over Oliver while also making sure his recovery is going well. While returning to Taliskria, Nolan reveals through a transmission that the Viltrumites are indeed on Earth. Alan holds a meeting with Nolan to discuss what should be done about the Viltrumites. Nolan believes that after years of living on Earth, the Viltrumites could change, while Alan doesn't share the same optimistic point of view. Alan asks Nolan to leave and ponders the decision he should make. While late night thinking, Alan asks Telia if doing something horrible for the sake of the universe makes him a bad person. She replies that making hard decisions is a part of his job. Later, Alan brings Nolan in to talk and reveals that he has made the decision that he will personally introduce the Scourge virus to Earth's atmosphere. Alan had to tell Nolan because he valued his friendship far too much, and he tells him that he's sorry. Nolan informs Alan that releasing the virus will possibly eradicate the human race as well, and Alan states that he knows this. Soon they start to argue, and then the two proceed to fight, while both tell each other their differing views. Oliver sees Alan beating up Nolan and starts to fight Alan, but the fight is broken up by Alan's soldiers. When Oliver hears what Alan is going to do, he decides to join him. Alan asks for Oliver's help in convincing Invincible and leaves, leaving his former friend and ally, Nolan, bloody and beaten. Soon after they arrive, the duo is greeted by Invincible, who doesn't know their true ambitions yet. So, after Mark greets them, Alan reveals his plan to Mark, much to Mark's disgust. Mark argues how this is any different than what Vilrumites did to Alan's people, and notices that Nolan wasn't there because he didn't agree with them. Alan apologizes, but believes it must be done. Mark attacks him, and Oliver attempts to restrain him. Alan also attacks him, and Frag arrives at the scene to offer his assistance to Mark, much to the trio's surprise. Frag reveals he knows about their plan and asks Alan to give him a reason not to kill him. Alan shows him the virus dispenser, angering him. Frag proposes a truce. Otherwise, this conflict will continue and soon they will back from where they started. Alan reluctantly agrees and soon the Guardians of the Globe arrive. After Mark refuses to come with them, the Guardians battle with the Four, with Alan and Frag being unaffected by their attempts to injure them. Oliver uses the chance to grab the virus dispenser and shoot it into the atmosphere, but he accidentally hits Mark with it. Alan rushes to save Mark after Oliver accidentally shoots the virus into his face. Mark is then taken into Viltrumite custody where they attempt to cure the virus. Alan then goes to see Dinosaurus, who initially took him as an enemy. Dinosaurus apologizes and Alan takes him to the Viltrumite warship. Soon they get into a brief argument about Alan assuming that Dinosaurus could breathe in space. As they arrive, the Guardians ready themselves for a fight. Frag lets Dinosaurus on board, but asks Alan and the Guardians to leave. After leaving, Oliver and Alan head to see Tech Jacket, but get caught in his battle. Soon Eve arrives to help them out, and she asks that they help Mark, believing Dinosaurus kidnapped him. In the midst of the battle, while rescuing Mark, Mark punches Alan, but breaks his arm in the process. They transport him to the Pentagon and leave to see Tech Jacket again. When they return, Mark yells at them for not helping the Flaxen London invasion. Afterwards, Oliver and Alan head to Thalaskria. When they arrive, Alan releases Nolan and sends him back to Earth on another mission. After some time, Alan would get a call from Nolan, learning that now he is the Emperor of the Viltrum Empire. He also learned that Frag was exiled from the Viltrum Empire instead of getting executed, which greatly angers him. Alan then tasks Space Racer with a message to Battle Beast. When Battle Beast arrives to his office, he informs him about Frag's exile and tasks Battle Beast with Frag's assassination. Later he sends a spaceship to Mark and Eve so they could arrive to live in Thalaskria. Alan greets the duo with their daughter Terra. He gets a closer look at her and she punches his eye. His bodyguards attempt to fight and Alan stops them. Soon Oliver arrives and greets them. Alan shows them their new place and returns to his duties. Alan gets a report from Space Racer about Battle Beast's assassination mission. Alan finds out that they have been fighting for weeks. Mark comes into his office after Alan asks that he come in. Alan asks if he is officially retired. Mark says yes, but he is willing to work if Eve and him need to live there. Alan offers him a job as a spy for the Coalition since it's not risky. Mark accepts, though thinking about reconsidering at first. Later that night, Alan knocks on the door to tell Mark that he needs him to finish off Frag, afraid that Battle Beast won't succeed. So, he sends Coalition soldiers along with Mark and Oliver to investigate and hunt down Frag while he is still recovering from his fight with Battle Beast. During this mission, Mark suddenly disappears without any trace, so while Mark disappears for 5 years, Alan continues his fight with Frag. At some point, he forces Oliver to start talking with Frag by becoming a double agent, even though Oliver never wanted to do it. After 5 years, Mark returns, and after reuniting with Mark, he hugs him hard. He asks for Mark's help in fighting Frag, but Mark refuses. Alan then goes to a party with Telia, which Mark attends as well. While Alan and Telia have an intimate moment, he receives an emergency call. It is later revealed to be false, and he is ambushed by Elia's goons. Alan manages to defeat all of them and get to Elia. However, Elia detonates a bomb, planning to kill them all. Alan survives the bomb attack but suffers major injuries. The attack sparks his healing factor even further, and he regenerates all his missing organs and limbs within a few days. While he recovers, Oliver informs Alan about Frag making progress around the galaxy. Alan was continuously getting pressured by the coalition of council members about Frag's increasing power, so in order to make Invincible join the fight against Frag, he reveals Invincible's family's location to Frag. So, Frag attacks Mark and his family, and as a result, Oliver loses his life. Enraged after learning that Alan was responsible for everything that happened, Invincible attacks him. But just as Alan predicted, Oliver's death forces Invincible to rejoin the battle, and soon the Coalition's entire forces launch an all-out attack on Frag's main base. But despite their preparations, they were easily overwhelmed by Frag and his children. Alan soon noticed that most of their forces were getting easily destroyed by Frag's children, so they decided to retreat. They then take the fight to Earth, where the pure-blooded Viltrumites also decided to help Alan and the Coalition after Nolan told them about the threat that Frag poses to Earth. Soon their final battle started. Alan and his elite soldiers were easily able to kill dozens of Frag's children, but he soon notices that his friend Nolan is in a near-death state after getting mutilated by Frag. He rushes to save him, but is stopped by Frag's children. Soon Eve comes to rescue Nolan and tells Alan that she will take care of him. When Mark faces Frag and jumps with him onto the sun's surface, Frag's daughter orders all her brothers and sisters to stop fighting as she came to realize that their father doesn't care if they live or die. So she along and everyone else surrenders in front of Alan, and Alan's forces captures all of them and put handcuffs on them. After some time, Alan also dives into the sun while looking for Invincible, and he soon comes across a burned Mark who is barely alive. He quickly grabs him and takes him back to give him necessary medical attention. He later meets Frag's daughter, his other children, and talks with them while teaching them about forgiveness. After some time, Alan learns that his friend Omni is not going to survive, and this news greatly makes him regret some of his decisions, because it was him who got Omni, Oliver and Invincible involved in the war once again, and now the Grayson family has lost so much because of him. Sometime after Omni-Man's death, Alan is notified that Robot has taken the families of pure-blooded Viltrumites and is now forcing them to fight Mark. Soon, he is also attacked by Lucan and other Viltrumites, but this situation is soon resolved after a battle where Mark ends up killing Robot. After everything settles down, Alan and Mark talk, and Mark tells Alan that their relationship can never be like it was before Oliver's death, and Alan understands. But Alan hopes that he can rely on Mark and his new Viltrumite empire for help when the Coalition needs them. After this, Mark starts ruling and expanding the Viltrumite Empire throughout the known universe. After hundreds of years of struggle, Mark manages to maintain peace in the universe, but this takes a negative effect on the Coalition of planets, because Mark and his Viltrumites are doing what the Coalition was supposed to do. Alan talks about this with Mark, but Mark says that at this point, Coalition is like a corrupt government, and they don't care what happens to the poor planets and their citizens. So Alan wasn't able to stop Mark from solving out intergalactic problems, and this leads to an all-out war between the Coalition of Planets and the new Viltrumite Empire. In the end, Alan and his Coalition of Planets gets defeated, and Alan realizes that they don't need the Coalition of Planets anymore. After this, we don't know what happened to Alan, but I think he probably lived peacefully with Telia. So yeah, that's all for this video, and thanks for watching.